Welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Loudmouth Luke, and today we are looking at our first request of the series. Well, sort of. I was uncertain of what album to look at this week, and one of my friends suggested the album we're looking at today. Today, we're taking a look at the Living Tombstone's debut album, Rust 1. Going in, I was familiar with the Living Tombstone since I was on YouTube a lot in the early 2010s, and they made a lot of songs based off of stuff like Five Nights at Freddy's and Overwatch, and I knew those songs and I thought they were very fun. However, I never really checked out any of the original songs this group made, so I'm very excited to see what this band is capable of. With all that said, let's take a look at the Living Tombstone's Rust 1. The first track is What I Want, and straight out the gate, it's a really great way to start the album. The instrumental almost has kind of a retro video game vibe to it in parts, which they've been described as an electronica rock band, at least based off of the tracks I've heard so far, so I really like the little chiptune bits and parts of the track. Plus, that guitar solo before the bridge is awesome. Vocally, I kind of have mixed feelings about it. I really love the singing parts of the vocals, especially in the chorus and in the bridge with its more like vocoded electronic feeling. However, the rap parts and the verses sound a little weird. And to be clear, they don't exactly sound bad, but they sound awkward, if that makes any sense. Maybe it's something in the delivery. It's hard to explain, but to me it just sounds kind of off. However, it's not really something that ruins the song for me. It's just something I noticed on the first few listens. The lyrics are about feelings of depression and imposter syndrome, which, as we'll later find out, is a overarching theme in this album. And in the context of being a musician, that is really emphasized in the bridge of the track, saying like, I want to make songs, I want to just dance, I want to be me. It's a very introspective track despite its very in-your-face instrumental. Either way, I think it's a really interesting way to start the album, so let's see if the rest of the album is as intriguing as the leading track. The next track is Drunk, and it's another interesting one. Just like the last song, themes of mental health are prevalent. However, it's more about using substances to cope with life. I really like the instrumental of this song. It does that thing where the instrumental's super like upbeat and happy and bouncy, yet the lyrics are really depressing. I love songs that do that. It's very fun, and it has a very like retro video game vibe to it, almost from like a rhythmic standpoint. It reminds me of games like Cuphead. It's another really good song, so let's keep going. The next song is Can't Wait, and it's another good one. Just like the last two songs, there's themes of mental health and depression, and I think it expands on some of the themes of the first song in the sense that it's more about burnout and writer's block and how it affects the creative process. It's very bouncy, just like the last song, and I love how rocky it sounds in the chorus. I also really like the little keyboard line in the verses. It's a nice little touch. It's another track I like, so let's get to the next one. The next track is Lazy, and it's another track I really like. The instrumentation feels a lot more energetic, or I would say that the other songs are, just in a different way. This one feels more like a rock song instead of an electronica one. The lyrics are about someone who is becoming lazy due to depression, and like the last track, I feel like it has a lot to do with the creative process and feelings of burnout. However, I think the feelings of laziness come from a lack of new ideas and not really with creativity as a whole. Either way, I really like this song, and it packs a punch with its theme, so let's get to the next one. The next track is Sunburn, and it's another good one. Instrumentally, the song almost reminds me of a lot of early 2010s EDM hits, and I think that mainly comes from the drop, so to speak, in the chorus. It's kind of really nostalgic in that way for me. The song seems to be about feelings of one-sided or unrequited love, and the sunburn in the title seems to be about feeling burnt from being used. I think it's another really good track, so let's get to the next one. The next track is LongTimeFriends, and there's a bit of a different theme to this one in comparison to a lot of the other songs, but I do really like it. The instrumental is very bouncy. I really like the little bam, 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 little guitar riff in there. And the rhythm of the track, in some ways, which is a little weird because it doesn't really sound like them, it reminds me a lot of early Panic at the Disco songs, specifically from the Pretty Odd era with its rhythm and some of the guitar work. The lyrics seem to be about reflecting on past friendships, with the narrator seeming to have some kind of resentment to those past friendships, almost being like, man, I was burned, I feel hurt, but I also do really miss the good times I had with these people, which is a subject in some respects I think a lot of people can relate to. I also love the guitar solo near the end of the track. It's a really nice feature. It's another really good track, so let's get to the next one. The next track is ZeroOne, and it's one of the more interesting tracks on the album, and it's also the longest song on the album, clocking in at almost 5 minutes. However, that's not really an issue because it doesn't feel like it goes on for too long. The song continues the theme of feelings of imposter syndrome that are throughout the album, which is emphasized in the line, living 1,000 lives, which is also probably another metaphor for just struggling with your identity overall. And because of that, you feel trapped in yourself, which, again, like a lot of the other themes from the album, I feel like is a very relatable subject. I really like the synth bass, and I also really like the vocoded, if that's the right term, vocals on the song. This probably has my favorite instrumental on the album. It almost sounds like a boss fight in like a Mario game. It's another really good track, and despite its longer length, it's really fun to listen to. Let's get to the next one. The next track is Animal, and it's another good one, but it isn't really a highlight of the album for me. It's another song about imposter syndrome, and it doesn't really do much with the themes that haven't been done already, but with that said, that doesn't make the song unenjoyable for me. The instrumental of the track almost reminds me of Skrillex in places, mainly from the Animal vocal line that's repeated throughout the track, and I also really like the bridge of the song. It's another good one, although I would say it's one of the weaker tracks, but once again, I do think it's solid, so let's get to the next one. The second to last track of the album is Fly Home, and I really like this one. I love the stomping beat this track has, and I think the guitar work and a lot of the other instruments are a lot more laid back in comparison to the rest of the album, so it does have a little nice contrast in that regard. Just like the rest of the album, the song seems to be about feelings of burnouts and having a lack of contentment from living Tombstone's success. However, there's a bit of a spin on that theme. It seems like being on top of the world is very isolating in that, yeah, you might have reached something you really wanted to be at, but a lot of times you just never really feel content with what you create. Similar to a lot of the other tracks on the album, there's a lot of contrast with the upbeat instrumentals and the depressing lyrics, and like I mentioned previously, I love when songs do that, and this one is no different. It's another good track, so let's see if this album goes out with a bang. The final track of the album is Chosen, and I think this is a great way to end the album. The track has kind of a very cinematic feeling in the instrumental that starts off very somber and builds into this epic electronic sound. And I love the instrumental and the bridge. It made me bang my head. It was so much fun to listen to. Like the rest of the album, the lyrics has themes of imposter syndrome. However, I think it expands on it in a really different way. It's more about feeling like you're being watched by an entity. And I don't know if it's intended to be about any religious figure. I don't know anything about the background of the people in this group, but it does capture that feeling of really questioning your faith. It's a really good track and a very intriguing and awesome way to end the album. Living Tombstone's Rust 1 was a really fun listen, and I think an incredibly solid debut from the group. It has super fun instrumentation, this electronica rock sound that makes the album super bouncy and fun to listen to. However, my only real critique is that sometimes the rap vocals can sound a little awkward, but it's not really something that ruins the album for me, and I think after the first few listens I did get used to it. But with all that said, Living Tombstone's Rust 1 gets a 7 out of 10 from me. Well, that wraps up another episode of For the Record. Thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you all have a great night.